My name's Steve Coy. I'm Director of Communications at Sacred Heart Cathedral School. And I thought before I really kind of jump into everything, I'd show a quick video, kind of a bit about what I do. I do many things. Video is a large part of what I do now in communications and media relations. Social media is obviously a huge platform in this day and age. So this is kind of one of the things I do. I do several different videos for the school and the cathedral. And this will kind of give you an idea of what I have to do some days. Some days it's a lot of writing. Some days I get to do fun stuff like this. So.
May your drives be long and straight. May your putts be short and true. And may there ever be a bit of green grass under every lie. May God bless you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Golf tournament was one of just a couple of events we have during the course of the year that support the school financially. So it allows us to make sure that the programs we have are as good as they possibly can be, that teachers' needs are being met, that students' needs are being met. And so this gives us some financial flexibility. So we're always looking to innovate and try to bring things that are better and bigger to the school in order to offer the best possible opportunity to our children. And so the flexibility that comes from the support from programs like our golf tournament are a huge part of helping us get there.
You know, today's one of those great days for our community. We bring out not only our school community, but we're blessed at Sacred Heart Cathedral School to have so many supporters outside of our parent and parish family. And so we've got really great friends, and they've all come out here today to help us have a great golf outing, but also, more importantly, to support the education that we provide for over 600 kids a year.
Pardon this interruption. You may now log into the network. Thank you.
Goodness. You gotta say your heart.
That's just one of the things I get to do on a on a fairly regular basis. My background, I actually started in news. I was in news and radio for close to 20 years. Actually got to work with Father Tony for several years when I was in the business. So I'm relatively comfortable shooting video and telling stories, which is what I kind of like to do in communications. On a kind of day-to-day basis, for what I do with communications, I look for a story around the school, the cathedral, the building of the cathedral, and trust me, there's lots of stories. How many of you went to Sacred Heart? So quite a few. So you know everything that I'm going around talking to teachers. I'm going to watching the building of the cathedral. It's a fun job. After being in news for 20 years and crossing over into the public relations field, that kind of really set me up on a good course. Education-wise, if you ever want, has anybody ever thought about doing anything with video or social media in terms of their work? Because what are you interested in doing?
More into sort of the sports, like advertisement for baseball clubs or
Okay.
football or anything like that.
Social media, the platform itself is so broad these days with Twitter, Facebook. I know that's kind of the old person's venue now, but Twitter, Reddit, Snapchat. Everybody looks to video. They want instantaneous gratification now. So nobody wants to read things. They want to watch a video on everything. So if it's something that you want to do, in terms of getting into PR or communications, doing something like that's good, because they really, when companies or businesses, and almost every company or business has somebody in communications now, whether it's a police agency or TVA or TDOT or even the health department for Knox County, they all have somebody that manages communications for them. You just can't pick up a phone and get the head person in charge anymore. There has to be a go-between before you get to that point. So that's where the communications person plays a role. They normally call that person, and then you set it up with them so the head person can take care of their own responsibilities and is not kind of being bombarded with phone calls on a fairly regular basis. So they look for people that have the communications and news backgrounds, and pretty much every agency in Knox County, that's kind of the trend now, is they're hiring people from news that have that experience of telling stories and having an eye like this and know how to communicate to the public, because that's what they did before they came over to this avenue. So that's a good way to get started if you ever want to get into PR or communications. Experience is always the best thing. You got, having Father Tony here and the what he does here, that's a huge thing to have. Not a lot of schools have that. If this is ever something you consider, what you can learn from him will lead you to do stuff like this on a daily basis, and get a company or business to notice you because they know that you've been doing it for a while. Day to day, my job, everybody's going to be different in terms of, again, depending on what agency you work for. But obviously with building a cathedral, I spend a couple days a week doing construction meetings, have to take notes, have to type up notes, get those sent out. But it's also finding the story there, maybe talking to a construction worker. How do I relay the information to the general public about what's going on with the cathedral? So I have to go to meetings a couple days a week. But then I also talk to teachers and administrators and find out what's going on. Maybe they're doing something special in a classroom, or they're going on a tour of the cathedral, or they are doing something like today. It's going to be cute, but they have an ice cream social for an awards thing today, but it's a big accomplishment because they doubled their reading goals for the school. So I'll be eating ice cream at 2 o'clock this afternoon for work. So I know that sounds horrible. The salary potential for a job like this it really varies. I know the PR person for Knox County Schools at one point, the previous one, I'm not sure about the new one, was making well over 6 figures for PR. And so when you look into getting like into big agencies, Knox County Schools, Tennessee Valley Authority, TDOT, you're looking at a pretty good growth potential in terms of not only career but salary. But of course, with that salary it's a big responsibility because you're in charge of communicating things to somebody. When you look at Mark Nagy, who's with TDOT, everybody know who TDOT is, I assume. He has to really pay attention. So he's not just sitting in an office. He goes out sometimes with the road crews and does stories on the road crews, or he has to monitor traffic. And if there's an accident, he has to make sure that information gets out in a timely manner so people are aware that that's something they need to watch out for when they're driving around the roads. So with more money becomes more responsibility, maybe longer hours, but more consistent hours. So, it's a relatively 8 to 5 job. But there are going to be some instances where, because it's PR, you're going to have to, maybe work a weekend or come in at night when you might think you have to be at home. But again, for the most part, you get to tell stories. You get to talk to people. That's the great thing about being at Sacred Heart is it's a community. I get to hang out, and I'm not just talking to parents. I've become friends with a lot of parents. I'm lucky enough to have children that go to Sacred Heart, and so I see them on a regular basis. So it's it's a lot of fun to do this work. Every now and again, you get a special circumstance that's unique, that doesn't come along with the day-to-day, with what you normally do day-to-day. Several months back, obviously, the fires in Gatlinburg, there was, I kind of went back to my news days. We had a big drive where we put out the day after the fires, where somebody at the school decided they wanted to help out. And they said, let's do it. We got a truck. Let's put out a message. So I had to put out the message on Facebook, Twitter, had to call the news stations, let them know that we were holding a drive. You want to drop off water, Gatorade, whatever you can drop off, we're doing that. And it went from one truck to, I think, 20 truckloads over the next several days were taken up to the Gatlinburg area of supplies. So I had to document a lot of that. Not only that, but we also coordinated with the 278th, the National Guard, so they could help because they weren't allowing people in the Gatlinburg. So what we collected, we had to drive up to Gatlinburg, drop off the supplies, and then they went up into Gatlinburg and took it to fire crews and whatnot. I have a video of that kind of shows a little bit more of a unique, let's see, how do we get out of this, Dave? Oh, there we go.
Well, we saw some coverage on the news this morning about the people needing help and needing water and things like that being evacuated. And we talked with our girls, and they put some of their allowance money in and went to purchase some things. And so we bought some things as well to bring them to help out.
Well, there are a lot of people up there risking their lives to take care of the people of Sevier County and East Tennessee, and we wanted to return that favor.
Just amazed that the fire spread so rapidly and just the destruction that's going on up there. Our hearts go out to those people and their families, and we just want to help out any way we can.
We've been a lot of places, Louisiana and the West and the southern states for tornadoes, and people from this area have always turned out and helped. And I knew that they would here too, and I'm proud.
The outpouring that I've seen in the short time we've been here, 12 hours-ish, has been absolutely amazing. You know, we're called the volunteer state for a reason, and in trying times like these, it really makes me proud to be from a state that's known for volunteerism, and they show it.
Obviously, that's not your run-of-the-mill, day-to-day stuff, but that's so lucky to be a part of a place that does stuff like that. Does anybody have any questions in regard to media?
What kind of media stuff did you do with your father, Tony?
Well, he was a producer, and I was a news photographer. So I went out with the large video cameras and went out to different stories and breaking news. I did sports. I did fun stories where I got to sit down with, I was lucky enough to be able to sit down with Philip Fulmer and Pat Semmett when she was alive, and actually one of my fun events that I went to every year. I really look forward to working the red carpets at the CMA Awards. You get to meet people, country stars, and be a part of a big event like that. So there's some, if you get into journalism or an avenue like that, because now there are a lot of online organizations that cover events like that, even though they're not in journalism, but you get to do fun stuff like that to where you get to, it doesn't even seem like work. It's a lot of fun because people are having I don't want to say it's a party, but I mean it's really fun to be at events like that. But Tony and I worked together a long time. Father Tony, he'll surprise you. He used to, he was a hands-on person. He did a lot of work himself, and he and I are the same. I think that's why we got along so well. Is you get to a certain point in your career where it's like, it's not that you don't trust somebody else to do something, but you know it's going to get done if you do it yourself. And I think that's going to be the key to not just media or communications, but to any job. You want to be surrounded by good people, but you also, you want to have that part of you that knows that if you want it done right, if it's something real special, that you want to do it yourself. And that's kind of why I do what I do, because this is kind of in my hands. And don't think there's not somebody looking over my shoulder to make sure I'm doing good work, because you always want somebody behind you to do that. Kristen Farley's a good example of that.
I'm just here to observe you.
She's good to look in over somebody's shoulder from time to time to keep an eye, keep you in line. And any other questions? Yeah.
A little bit about kind of education is involved with where you are.
It's honestly, it's kind of, you definitely want to get a degree. When I started out, I started out in radio. Media and public relations wasn't, I'm really going to date myself, but 20 years ago wasn't on anybody's radar. There were marketing firms, but it wasn't a career that somebody looked to get into. They wanted to get into journalism. And then over time, with as social media and the internet's developed, and again, you want to have that go-between between, you just can't call Knoxville Police Department and get the police chief. You have to get their person who also came from news. Agencies realized they needed that person that needed to communicate. So journalism degree is a great way to get into that, into something like this, because it gives you that experience of learning how to communicate to the public and people and writing, and that's what they're looking for, because that's a big part of your job is making sure, or at least my job is making sure the website is updated. If there's new events, getting things posted. If there are big events, coordinating with newspapers. But because you were in my case, I was in journalism and worked in the news, I know who to call. Whereas your boss may not know who to call. And in a place like Knoxville, everybody's kind of on a first name basis. So, I can look around at all different companies. I know exactly who I can call when I pick up the phone, because I probably worked with them when I was working in news. But journalism is definitely a great start. Communications, there's public relations. There's all different classes that kind of work towards getting something like this. It's just what avenue you want to go to get, but it's to get to this point. But if you start out in journalism, you're definitely on a good path. Any other questions? Media relations? The outlook for a career like this, it's only going to get bigger. People are all the time, like agencies are getting bigger, and they're always looking for a person to help market what they do. And it's a fun career. Again, you get to do stuff like this. One of the fun parts of my job is I get to fly a drone a couple times a week to do stories. That's another thing that's kind of changed how you do things in communications. I have a video that kind of focuses on that, but it's weird to think like something as small as that has played such a big part in what we do in communications, because it gives you that perspective. And I'll show a video here in a second of the possibilities of what a drone can provide, but most recently what you may have been able to see is the dam failure in Oroville, California. A lot of the footage you saw was drones flying over it, because that was the only way to get a good perspective on the damage that was caused by all the rains they received out there, because it was able to get lower than what a plane or a helicopter would get. And that's how they were able to get information out to people, like good information and accurate information and up close pictures, so people could actually see what was going on, rather than a plane flying over at 3,000 feet and not really able to get that close in. Put this in perspective, if any of you have driven by the cathedral on North Shore, the top of the cross is 150 feet in the air. Now we used to, when we were news, would have to stay down on the ground, zoom in on it, but then you're so far away you couldn't get that close. So now with the use of drones, you're able to get, just like what I talked about with the dam failure in California, and something like this, you're able to get, just for safety purposes, I didn't get any closer, but I think I got about within 6 feet of what they were doing in part of this video.
This is like I'm part of something bigger than life in a way. This is special. I mean, every time you work with gold, it is special. And every work, every job is very different, and this is unique. When you are in front of the cross, you see it differently.
The opportunity to work with Ann gilding the cross was just something that you just couldn't put into words. It's the bishop blessed it, so it's pretty amazing.
This is like I'm part of something bigger than life in a way.
There's no way to describe it. It was a feeling of awe. Number one, you're dealing with gold, but also to deal with the cross, it's pretty heartwarming.
It's true that every time you are higher, closer to the sky, you feel like you're reaching heaven. And actually, that's what I would say every time I go up. I say, okay, we're going to heaven. So it feels like you are definitely changing space, going from one space where you are comfortable, where you have your feet on the ground, and you're going to another space, which is unknown, even though it's still around, but it's an unknown space. It's really closer. It's bigger than life. It's bigger than what we normally encounter.
Okay. So that again is one of the great parts of my job, is I get to tell stories. And working for the cathedral and the schools, I not only get to tell stories, but I get to talk about our message, which that's a perfect example is faith. I'm really fortunate to be able to do that and be able to communicate that with not just our parishioners, but with you guys as well. We only have a couple more minutes. Is there any other questions that y'all can think of?
So with the stuff that you do here, where do you guys normally post that? Is it on Instagram or on your website?
We have Instagram accounts, we have Vimeo, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, and our Facebook and Twitter are tied together. So when this gets posted, then we have our webpage as well. But when we post this on Facebook, it automatically sends out something on Twitter as well. But if you follow the school or the cathedral on the Facebook page, that gets loaded into our video section. It's probably the main place where we start promoting a lot of our videos. That's just from what we found with what we're doing, is videos get more attention than I do take a lot of still pictures as well, but the videos grab a little bit more attention than pictures. But you're welcome.